Positive Friday. Your work week could be over. You should make your way home, or just make out of your lair if you're working from home, like I have been for a while. Kind of get used to it. You walk upstairs, hey, I'm home. It's happening. So hopefully you have big plans for the weekend. Likely include some playoff watching. I know some of you diehard campers, you get out for May long weekend. Like that's, to me, you're a diehard camper when you do the May long weekend, because I find it's a little too chilly. I'm kind of a fair weather camper. I'll say that openly. So to all of the diehards, I know some of you got your phone, you got your TV set up while you're camping, or glamping, shall we say, whatever it is. Hope you're having a good time. We welcome in Alan Mitchell, host of the Lowdown, 10 to noon on TSN 1260. Al, are you a camper?
I used to be when I was, kids changed a little bit. We're more RVers now. Or we just go on holidays and stay in hotels,
Yeah, okay. Well, that's fair. Nice. Did you make s'mores on the fire, Al?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I tried a few, because I also like the beer when I'm camping, and a few of them did fall into the fire. So I attempted more than I made, probably.
Okay, well, that's good. Edmonton Oilers. So I'm going to ask you, would you start McDavid and Draisaitl together or start them apart tonight?
I'd start them apart, just because, I would make Winnipeg reestablish what they had, which was a pretty good, they were getting in McDavid's way. There wasn't a lot of clean air. Puljujarvi was, I thought, pretty effective on that line. And then if McDavid still can't get, free, then I might change it up a little bit. I'm intrigued by the idea of it, and I think they'll probably go to it earlier, maybe even in the first period if it's still scoreless tonight. But there's no reason to panic. I think they could have easily won Game 1 with the setup that they had, the lines that they had, and nobody played so badly that I think you have to bump them down, put it that way. So I'd start with the lines as they were and then tweak as required.
Okay. See, I was looking at the numbers. They played 6:43 together, did McDavid and Draisaitl, 7-0 in shots, 5-1 in scoring chances, 13-2 in shot attempts. I think Edmonton needs a good start. I'm loading him up right from the get-go because Paul Maurice basically went Scheifele predominantly against McDavid for the most part. Like, he played 14 minutes. Lowry played 3 against him, and then you get the odd shift of, Paul Stastny actually played the least. The fourth line saw 2 minutes, and Stastny was just under. But I would go Draisaitl and McDavid, but I wouldn't put Puljujarvi with him, Al. I would have Puljujarvi with Nugent Hopkins because right now, yes, he's your third best forward, and he gives you a chance to create some stuff. And Yamamoto, Cahoon, and Nuge, to me, are just too small of a trio.
Well, one thing, there's a lot the coach knows that we don't. But if the coach feels like Puljujarvi has taken another step, and maybe he and Nuge and whomever can form a line that can, you don't have to necessarily outscore. You just can't get outscored yourself. So if they can keep the puck 200 feet from the Edmonton net and turn over pucks on the forecheck, then a line with, like, Nugent Hopkins and Puljujarvi are both great forecheckers. They really are. They can suffocate a team. So from that point of view, there's a real advantage. And then, if you're not getting outscored by that line, that's probably your Lowry line. And then you've got the two monsters head-to-head with Scheifele, which is, even though Scheifele's a very fine player, as is Wheeler, they're going to be outmatched with those two guys on the same line at 5-on-5.
Yeah, no question about it, for sure. And I just, like, Edmonton, I didn't mind their game, Al. I just felt like they definitely were too cautious to start the game. Like, no shots in 8 minutes, that's not good. And then their passing was just off. Like, Dave Tippett mentioned jitters, and maybe there's a little bit of that. They're still not the most experienced group, and you can't play nervous and succeed in the playoffs. You kind of you got to play composed, but you can't play too nervous, or you can't just play wild. And Edmonton's got to find that comfort zone where you have the nerves, but you don't let your nerves control you.
Yeah, and hockey is such a game of passing, and right away at the beginning of the game, in Game 1, Nurse, who has really improved as a passer. I mean, I think he's outstanding. He had made an errant pass. There was a little bit of a hesitation by Nuge on a great pass from Cuckoo. It just felt like there was a kind of a hitch in the giddy-up, and really not anybody specifically, but everybody in total in Game 1. And like, the goal that won the game was an absolute fluke. And if you wanted to score that goal, maybe they win, and we're talking about a different thing. So the margins are so close here. I really hesitate to damnation anybody, because I just don't think it warrants that. But they have to win tonight, so they've got to just, what's that line from that movie? Don't think, throw. Nuke Lelouch. That's what they just stop thinking and play the game you know how to. And if they do that, they'll win the game.
Al Mitchell, a.k.a. Lowtide, joined us. Al, what'd you make of Toronto-Montreal last night?
Well, I always wonder when an important player on a team, or any player on a team, gets hurt like that. I wonder if the team that has it happen to them is going to be able to kind of reset. And I thought Toronto did a pretty darn good job of it. Yeah. But Montreal, we've talked about it, Jason, before. You've mentioned this. They're built for the playoffs. And they're a suppression team. They've got a goalie who can just shut you down. And now, I think Toronto will win this series, but I never thought it was going to be a 4 or 5 gamer. This is a series, and that's a tough Montreal team. They're better than I think people think, and I think the Oilers know that, because they played Edmonton very hard when they were against each other in the regular season. But I'm not surprised Montreal won. I'm really sad that Tavares got hurt. That's a big hole for Toronto, and it does change their chances of getting to the Final Four.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. We'll see how long he's out with the concussion they announced. My big question really for Toronto is, Montreal was a really good 5-on-5 team, and then they just hit the ditch when they played all those games in a short period of time. So maybe it was that, or maybe there were some weaknesses in their game 5-on-5. But where you can beat them is on special teams. And Toronto special teams right now, I honestly, I went back the last 10 years because it took a long time. I've never seen a team who started at 33% and then plummeted down to 10% in the final 36 games. Like, they're 5 of 74 on the power play, and they have the lead. Like, I know, it's funny. Everyone's like, "Oh, Austin Matthews 5-on-5 scored." I'm like, "Yeah, okay," but hey, last I checked, great. Like, I never downplay power play goals, because they're just as important on the scoreboard, and the Leafs can't do it. And then it cost them, and Paul Byron, give him credit, great goal. But my goodness, when you can't score in the power play and then you give up a shorthander, you're just not going to win very many games in the playoffs that way.
No, and when that shorthanded goal went in, I didn't say the game's over, but I felt like it was, because the Leafs are, I don't know why they can't score on the power play. They've got stunning talent, but they just can't, and it's a mental block, and they're going to have to just park somebody in front of the net and have a few pucks go in off his butt. That's usually how you get out of a slump that way. But Montreal's in a good spot right now to make this series go deep, as is Winnipeg here in the Edmonton series. But if Toronto or Edmonton get their cannons pointed in the right direction, then I think both of those teams will win the series.
Nazem Kadri had his Zoom hearing today. He elected to go into it. Well, obviously it's going to come out tonight before the game starts. I said 6 games, Al. What do you think he gets?
I think 6 is fair, 5 or 6. I just, it's disappointing. I felt the same way about Rafi Torres, who was a very fine player, and he couldn't get that headhunting out of his game. And I'm a Kadri fan. I'm not going to knock him at all. I think he's a wonderful player, but he can't play that way. That's not allowed. It's no longer acceptable to really risk somebody's long-term health, and certainly put him out of the series as he did with that head hit. And it's pretty clear to me he can't iron that out of his game now. So, I think it's only a matter of time before Kadri isn't in the league, and that's a damn shame, because he's a wonderful two-way player. A really wonderful two-way player.
Yeah, I think when I look at him, like Scotty Upshall, I thought had a really good description on the show yesterday. He says that hit, the way when you come down, right, you cross to the middle and you're trying to hit the guy, he says, at best, you got like a 1% chance of hitting him clean. He says it's just angles and speed of the game. It's a very difficult body check to deliver clean. And Scotty would know, he played, right? And he played on that edge. And so going in, it's an extremely low percentage play, and your odds of hitting him on the side of the head, he says that's the most likely outcome. So when you deliver that hit, for the most part what the outcome is going to be. Even if you think you can make it, you just can't be as arrogant to think you can make that hit, is how he said it.
Yeah, and it's predatory, and I just don't think he can resist. I'm not saying he's a bad player or a terrible human being. However Nazem Kadri is wired, all the wonderful gifts he has in hockey, it's like Brad Marchand. I mean, I'm a big Marchand fan, but some of the stuff he's done, Jason, it is like and I guarantee the coach is licking people or whatever. I'm sure they've been talked to about it, but I don't know, man. There's something about how people are wired, and I guarantee Kadri saw that, and whatever lessons he'd learned in the past were gone, and he really felt he could do that hit without hurting him and make it clean, and the warnings weren't enough, and Wilson in Washington is another, and you can play on the edge, but you're going to pay for it, and if you do it enough, then the punishment's going to be very big, and I think that's what we'll see tonight for Kadri.
Al Mitchell joins us. I'm the sports leader, TSN 1260. Which other series, Al, has been much must-watch TV for you?
Well, I'm watching the two Canadian ones, plus Boston, Washington, for lots of reasons, but I grew up a Bruins fan, so I watch them quite a bit. Florida, Tampa has been fantastic. And not that it's been such a great series, but I cannot stop watching the Colorado Avalanche. It's like they're just so powerful. Like, potentially they could just run over everybody. And I think they're on a collision course with probably the Carolina Hurricanes. But Colorado Avalanche are like I think they can contend for 3 or 4 or more years here with not much tweaking. They look like they're locked and loaded. They just have so much talent on the ice.
Yeah, it's you know what? There's the Washington-Boston series. I've loved that. The Tampa Bay series has been great. I'll be honest, like the game two of the Islanders-Pittsburgh series might be one of the worst games I ever watched. But last night, like, I didn't start watching it, but I got sucked in watching the second and third, and it was actually quite good. So I'll give him credit. But I'll say this: the Islanders goaltenders, Varlamov, in 2 games now has let in goals that he just doesn't let in the regular season often, and that's why suddenly you're seeing goals go up in that series. And I wonder what Barry Trotz does, because in game 2, I know it was only 1 goal, but you lose 2-1. That was a terrible goal. And then there was 2 goals last night where I'm like, I'm not sure you want your goalie to at least make one of those saves. So I wonder if we have the young Russian in goal for game 4.
The goalies are at the playoffs. You get used to the rhythm of the season, right? And then the playoffs come, and then if a goalie does something that you didn't unexpected, then you start, I think, as fans or observers, you go, wait a minute, what's that? And a guy like Trotz, he'll know whether or not his goaltender is just off or wrong, or maybe he's slightly hurt. Who knows? But I don't think this is the time to hesitate in that series, especially because it feels like Pittsburgh's they got Carter, and they're figuring a few things out here. That's bad for the opposition when a veteran team starts feeling like maybe there's something special.
Al, enjoy the games. What's your fun prediction tonight?
Oh, I think Edmonton will win. I think it'll be closer than people want it to be. It'll be like 4-2 with an empty netter or something like that. I expect McDavid to have a big impact at Draisaitl too. I can almost guarantee that the Winnipeg Jets won't be as perfect as they were in game 1. It's a tough way to play and do it perfectly. They're gonna let loose somebody, and it's going to end up in the back of the net.
So what about when you go on air Monday? What's the series going to be at?
How many games will they play? We'll play 4 by then, or 3?
No, 3. They'll play 3. So what's it going to be? 2-1
I think it'll be 2-1 Edmonton. I believe they're the best team. I don't think it's going to be Edmonton in 5. I think there's more upset stomachs for Oilers fans here the next week or so. But I think the Oilers will win here tonight, and then I think they'll win on Sunday, and that'll set up an interesting Monday game.
Awesome. Al, should be fun. Have yourself a great weekend. Enjoy the games.
You too, Jason.
That's Camper Al, we like to call him, or Low Tide, host of the Lowdown, Monday to Friday from 10 until noon on TSN 1260. Also writes at The Athletic. Quick break. We'll come back. Sarah Oleski joins us to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois, who will make his appearance in the series tonight. Positive Friday continues on. Oilers-Jets, about over an hour and a half away from Game 2 as we go around the NHL, brought to you by McDonald's, and it's game day. You know what that means? Download the McDonald's app. You get it. It's great. And on game days, you get $2 Big Macs. All sorts of other great deals that you can get through the McDonald's app. As we are joined by Sarah Orlesky from TSN, covering the Winnipeg Jets. And Sarah, of course, one big addition, the only lineup change tonight for either team. Pierre-Luc Dubois comes in. He's only missed a week, only missed one game after the injury suffered when it looks like he got clipped by Wayne Simmons. You've seen him all year long. Long term, I assume he's a center, but why hasn't it worked so far this year for Dubois in Winnipeg?
That's a good question. I think that partly you have to look at the scenario that he came in and what he's been dealing with so many others. But I mean, he goes through his first trade. He has to go through the quarantine. He's got an injury as soon as he gets back on the ice. And he just hasn't seemed to really find his groove yet. And I think that they're hoping now that maybe postseason is the style of game as we saw last year in the bubble, but can be the style of game that suits the way that Dubois can play. But I think that we're going to see a lot of him on the wing. Paul Stastny has played really well in that center role, and it gives them a variety of different options to go with. But yeah, it hasn't been the smooth transition that everybody hoped that he would be. Certainly long term, Paul Maurice has made it very clear that he sees Dubois as being the center, and you think of the upside that Dubois has as he continues to develop. It's there. We just haven't seen it to the extent that I think people hoped that they would have up to this point.
Yeah, and I think this year, like in a lot of teams, a player gets traded to a new team. There's not always instant success right away, and I think this year you add to it with his injury and the pandemic. It probably, next year you'll likely be a much different Dubois. But the playoffs it's like a new season, and we've seen lots of guys have an average regular season and then light it up, and he's obviously hoping that. The Jets themselves, are you expecting them, because Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, when they're together, they're really dangerous. The most dangerous duo in the league. There's no question about it. And I suspect there's a good chance we'll see more of them tonight. Obviously, it sounds like it'll be the Scheifele line. Do you see the Jets, do they have a game plan when they're together? Because when those two were together in the regular season, they really had their way with Winnipeg.
They did. I mean, you could argue that they both, and especially McDavid, had their way during the regular season, whether they were together or apart. That Winnipeg had no answer for them. But I think that it's just their discussion was more about just being sharper in the execution. I think that the Jets are expecting to see that as well. And we've seen, obviously, when Dave Tippett goes to it, as you mentioned, the success that they can have. So it's a matter of trying to contain them. The Jets did a good job with it. They felt going into this postseason that for all of the talk about the slide that they had been on, and certainly, the results weren't there and you weren't seeing them score with any sort of frequency as well. But Paul Maurice kept harping about how this was about getting the game right for the type of game that you were expecting to see in the postseason, and feeling that even if the results weren't there, that they needed to get certain things turned around in their game, and that he was seeing them, that the metrics were showing that they were trending in the right direction. And so we'll see whether or not they're able to have an answer for them, but it's certainly, I think everybody is expecting to see, on that Jets team, is expecting to see a much harder push from the Edmonton Oilers tonight, and more of what they saw in the regular season than what they saw in Game 1. Yeah,
I thought it was kind of cautious for both teams. And, Winnipeg, hey, they'll play that style all day if it means McDavid and Draisaitl aren't freewheeling all over the ice, right? And, you look at Winnipeg, you've got Lowry's line. What does Winnipeg want to do better tonight that they didn't do in Game 1?
I think they'd like to get more traffic in front of Mike Smith. I think that like to see. I mean, the way that even when you saw, not that it was traffic, but just Tucker Pullman going to the net on his goal, and then Toninato able to do the tip on his. I think that they felt as if they didn't get they didn't get enough bodies in front of him, so they'd like to see a little bit more of that. I think that they're expecting it to be more of a speed game and a little more north-south tonight than what we saw in Game 1, because it was, you mentioned, it was a cautious approach from both teams, but that plays better, or that plays more in the favor of Winnipeg than it does in Edmonton, because as much as it wasn't the most entertaining game that we have seen in the postseason so far, when you think about so many of the other series, especially obviously the ones down south, it's the type of game that Winnipeg need to play in order to try to have success. And I think to be able to build some confidence for them as well, and reinforcing, I think it reinforced for Paul Maurice what he was trying to preach to the players, and showing them that if you buy into this, that there is the possibility of having success.
Sarah Orlesky joins us from TSN and Winnipeg Jets Oilers Game 2 tonight. Nikolai Ehlers, I watched him today after practice. He was out there shooting. I must have shot 50 pucks, maybe 70. So clearly his shot's fine. Then he was skating lots afterwards. Like, he seems like he's getting really close. He didn't have the practice. He didn't have the no-contact jersey on today. He was in the white jersey, which seems to illustrate top six guys.
Yeah.
You think there's a chance he's back on Sunday?
I think there is. I'll be interested to see what happens. No, I mean, the tough part, well, I was going to say that they don't practice on Saturday, but Game 3 and Game 4 are back-to-back anyways for it. I think he's getting closer. They've never said exactly what it is that Ehlers is dealing with, although many of us suspect that it's his shoulder for it. So today was the first day that we saw him out of the non-contact jersey, and he's been practicing for a while, or skating for a little while now, getting back into it. But I think it'll be interesting. I think he's certainly a possibility. I know that Paul Maurice said that, I think if it was up to Ehlers, that Ehlers is pushing hard, that he might be ready to go. And the Winnipeg Jets need him. I think that they change, even though he had missed the final 9 games of the regular season, that he changes the look of that offense so much. And I don't think that maybe even I fully appreciated before he was injured just the impact that he has in so many different areas. So it would be a huge boost for Winnipeg from an offensive standpoint, and it would allow, presuming everybody stays healthy through this game, if he's able to return on Sunday, it would allow those lines to go back to what Paul Maurice envisioned for them, and I think where they're able to show off their most depth. And you would have Andrew Kopp be able to slide back down onto the line with Lowry and Mason Appleton, and Matthew Pro did well there in Game 1, but it kind of slots everybody back in where they need to be for the Winnipeg Jets to have the utmost success.
Only saw one power play in the first game. Obviously the lowest of any series by far. Now, I really don't think there was a ton of missed calls in that game. Like, it wasn't overly physical. There wasn't a lot of hooking and obstruction, anything like that. The Jets have a good power play, for sure, but their power play actually in the last 10 games was only 8%. Is it just because, did they miss Nick Ehlers that much? What happened down the stretch?
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of their power play, it's funny because if you look just at the numbers, they finished with a high-ranking power play overall. But exactly as you mentioned, in fact, it's funny because the final regular season game was against Toronto, and I said for as much as people have been discussing all of the trials and tribulations of the Toronto Maple Leafs power play, over the final 10-game stretch of the regular season, they actually had a more potent power play than the Winnipeg Jets did, because they were operating around 6.8%, being Winnipeg. Ehlers certainly impacts them, and I think that in particular, so he's on their second power play unit. It's the second power play unit that I felt, especially in the back half of the season, was the most dangerous. They're a lot more dynamic. There's a lot more movement on that power play, on that second power play unit than the first one. The first one has the big guns and the Scheifele, Connor, Wheeler, but I just feel that they're just more stagnant and looking for that perfect shot. And so he made a big difference, not just 5-on-5, but for the power play as well. So you noticed it kind of across the board in the trickle-down effect of not having him there. But you would think that the Winnipeg Jets, given the talent that they have and the offensive skill, that they would be able to get that power play going. But they just have not been able to. But again, we could say the same thing about the Toronto Maple Leafs or a number of other teams as well that seem to have just been stuck in mud and remarkably haven't been able to score. But I had said to someone when the Oilers weren't able to score on that power play, I said, you just watch. That to me was, I felt as if there was a little bit of extra jump for the Jets after they were able to do that kill. And so you watch, the Jets are going to win this game now that they've killed that off, and certainly one of their priorities. They're not a heavily penalized team, or they weren't in the regular season, but one of their priorities certainly was staying out of the box because you don't want to give Connor McDavid and company too many opportunities.
Yeah, the Oilers and the Jets, both top 10 teams in not taking penalties. And so I never thought there'd be a ton of power plays in this series, but Edmonton's going to have to work harder to force Winnipeg to take some penalties. And, Edmonton's power play hasn't dipped really all season long. It's been pretty consistent and got a little bit better down the stretch. Was good against the Jets. And so, unlike Toronto, it's amazing. Toronto's power play, you can argue, cost them the game last night. Not only did they not score, they then gave up a shorthanded goal. And that special teams, some people downplay it. I still think it's massively important when you have it. And for Edmonton,
I think especially the penalty kill. As much as the power play, for me, the power play can be such a difference maker. I mean, you can't get outscored on your power play. would be the key. But I think that the penalty kill in particular, when you're looking at the postseason, just so key. And that's why for the Winnipeg Jets to be able to stay healthy and have the likes of the Andrew Kopps, Adam Lowry's on their penalty kill. It's a huge challenge when you're going up against the Edmonton Oilers, but I think that they have the skill there to be able to at least contain them, but you just can't give them many opportunities.
Well, Sarah, always good to catch up with you. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks much.
That's Sarah Orlesky from TSN in Winnipeg. So Pierre-Luc Dubois in tonight, maybe Nick Ehlers by the weekend or Monday. It was Around the NHL, brought to you by McDonald's, where you can make it a great Friday. Go download the McDonald's app, and guess what? You can get $2 Big Macs. Only through the McDonald's app. And you know what else you can get? Right now is you can qualify for the TSN 12-6 Party Crashers, as they will come to your house. Yes, and spice up your party, make it even better, which is always great. So very simple. We're going to have a little trivia question, Oilers trivia question, which is always fun. So we'll take you back. Actually, we're going to take you back a little bit to 2006. That was a pretty good run in the postseason. I think many of you enjoyed it, right? Everybody remembers that Fernando Pisani led the Oilers in goals with 14. Which two players were tied for second on the Oilers in goals in 2006? 10-12-60. I need both names. Text into 10-12-60. The two that were tied, they each had 7. The two guys with 7 goals in 2006. Text it to 10-12-60. 550. Big hit in the Washington-Boston game. Dmitry Orlov got a piece of Miller, who, I'm not sure Miller's coming back in that game. Maybe he's going to probably definitely go into the spotter booth for concussion protocol. It was a pretty big hit. It dumped it off. Jeez. Man, I know Miller's had some previous concussion issues, and he got hit there, but not crazy hard. I'm not even sure if he got him in the head, but it can jar your neck, right? So we'll have to see a different angle from that. But never good when you see a player like that. So we'll see. Miller, pretty important. Now I see the other replay here, and yes, Orlov looks like he gets him in the chin. So I wonder if he gets a penalty. We'll see. Cons, what's your prediction for the weekend?
The weekend?
Two games.
Going beyond just tonight. I think I'm going to go with the wise man, Alan Mitchell. He's seen a lot of hockey in his time, and I think the Oilers bounce back, like we say. I mean, it was a 4-1 game on Wednesday, but the 2 empty netters kind of make it look worse than it is. I think some people think that matters a little more. So I'm going to say they bounce back strong tonight and then go play a good road game on Sunday. And when we're talking Monday at 2, the Oilers are up 2-1.
Ooh, you guys are both okay.
Optimistic people.
I think the Oilers win tonight for sure, but I think the Jets might squeak out a Sunday win, and then Oilers even it up on Monday. I think it's going to be 2-2, and then a best of 3. It just adds to the intrigue in the series. So we will see. The Nashville Predators trying to get on the W for the first time. They're leading 2-1 after 40 minutes. No lineup changes tonight. Tommy Gazzola, Connor Halley are coming up in the pregame show for the Oilers. I should say no roster changes. We might see different lines potentially. I think there's a good chance. If it's me, I'm loading up McDavid and Draisaitl right off the hop because they dominate Winnipeg, and you want to get a good start. You want to get some momentum, feeling some juice, everything going your way. And best way to do it is you put the 2 best scorers in the NHL on the same line, and they can dominate. And then, but I wouldn't have Puljujärvi there. I would have him on the second line with Nugent Hopkins, because I think then he gives you a little balance there. And Puljujärvi's played very well down the stretch, and then of course I thought him and Archibald were the Oilers' 2 best forwards. If they can get more guys playing like Puljujärvi and Archibald, they'll have much more success tonight. Enjoy the weekend, folks. Please don't drink and drive. We are on the air Monday. I know it's a long weekend, but wherever you're at, making your way home, tune in. We'll have all sorts of pregame chatter, Oilers and the Jets. Pregame show with Tommy and Connor coming up right now. Sports Center update brought to you by Legacy Heating and Cooling. Home of the no payments, no interest for 1 year on your AC unit. Don't be a sweaty mess. Go to legacyheating.ca. Good night.